I tried a hardcore Nuzlocke of Pokémon Emerald with only grass starters, and I know what you're thinking. Starter Pokémon are some of the best Pokémon in the game. Well, you're technically right, but grass-type Pokémon have a few small weaknesses. They're weak to being lit on fire, getting a little poison on them, getting hit by some snow, getting bit by a bug, and being hit by a gust of wind. This challenge is also a Nuzlocke, meaning that any Pokemon that faints is dead forever, and I can only catch a grass starter after obtaining a gym badge. The rest of the rules for this challenge are on the screen and the description down below. Let's get started because we have a lot of ground to cover. Or grass. As per a usual Pokemon Emerald playthrough, we start out by picking up a starter. Surprisingly, this game has gotten rid of Torchic and Mudkip and replaced them with Rowlet, Bulbasaur, and the classic Trico. I decided that Bulbasaur is the best choice due to its access to great utility moves like Leech Seed and Poison Powder early on. Also, all the starters have their hidden abilities in this challenge because Overgrow is boring on all Pokemon. There's not much to do before we already have to face the first gym leader, Roxanne, and her rock types. With a Vine Whip apiece, Amazon is able to cleanly KO Roxanne's first two Geodudes, which brings in the main course, Nose Pass. For this stage in the game, this thing is incredibly hard to deal with. I start out by going for a Leech Seed to do passive damage and also to get passive recovery, and then it actually pays off because the Rock Tomb does massive damage and lowers my speed, but luckily I do recover some HP with a Leech Seed. Nose Pass then luckily wastes a turn by going for a block, meaning I can go for a Vine Whip to do decent damage and bring this thing into the yellow. This then prompts Roxanne to heal up with a potion as I go for a Vine Whip, which is a little less than half of Nose Pass's HP. Luckily, Nose Pass then does something horrible and goes for a Harden on the following turn, but then she heals up with an Oran Berry, which is even worse. Every time Roxanne heals up, it always risks a critical hit on Amazon, which could end the run early. A Vine Whip then brings Nose Pass back into the yellow HP range, but then Roxanne has a second potion and heals back all the way to full HP. I'm not going to waste your time anymore because a few turns later, a couple more Vine Whips pick up the KO, winning me the battle and the first gym badge. That was surprisingly hard for no reason. After saving the world's worst employee, Amazon evolves into an Ivysaur who is the best second stage starter you can have. You cannot change my mind, all of them look so awkward. But our solo journey comes to an end as I can go ahead and pick up another starter, in this case being a Rowlet. Rowlet is a phenomenal Pokemon and will be incredibly useful later on. Look at him, he's so round. That is, until he evolves into every middle schooler. Why do second stage starters have to be so bad? At least I can forgive him because Sierra here destroys May's entire team, but that makes sense because May isn't that good of a trainer. She can't even fully evolve her starters, so that says a lot considering her dad is the professor. To continue my journey, I have to go on a boat alone with an old man. You know, parents in home really trust their 10-year-old to do literally anything. But who cares because it's already time to face Brawly and his fighting types for badge number 2. He leads off with a Machop and I get Amazon out there. I go for a Vine Whip as this thing goes for a bulk up. Even so, I can go for a Vine Whip bringing this thing into the yellow as I tank a Karate Chop. And then my Vine Whip gets the critical hit, which is awesome. This brings in Brawly's second Pokemon, Meditite, and I'll let you in on a little secret. This may seem like a horrible matchup on the surface, but as long as you attack on every turn, Meditite can't hurt you because his only attacking move is Focus Punch. A few turns later, Meditite is taken care of, which just leaves Brawly's ace, Makuhita. Makuhita is actually a very scary threat here with bulk ups and arm thrusts. I start out by going for a Leech Seed on turn number 1 as this thing goes for a bulk up. This is not looking good all of a sudden. At the very least, Leech Seed keeps me healthy. I then go for a Poison Powder to get even more passive damage as Makuhita goes for a second bulk up. With these utility moves set in place, I can finally start attacking. I go for a Vine Whip, which brings this thing down into the berry range as I tank an Arm Thrust, which even with the +2 attack, it doesn't really do that much damage. Amazon's job is basically done, so I pivot into Syria on a Vital Throw, which actually does a little bit of damage. It's not like it really matters because on the following turn I'm able to go for a Peck to cleanly get the KO, winning me the battle. That was surprisingly straightforward. Another badge means another encounter, and I find a Turtwig who's my favorite grass type starter. I mean, look at this thing, it's clearly peak. Tell me your favorite starter down in the comments below, and while you're down there you might as well subscribe to support me. It's completely free, and it really helps me make more videos. With some levels, Chuck evolves into a Grotto, which is a phenomenal Pokemon as you'll later see. After my grass types cleanly destroy Team Aqua, and Syria has his annual Beat May because she's stupid and she's not good and she'll never be as good as Gary or Silver challenge, it's off to Watson for badge number 3. Watson leads off with Voltorb and I lead off with Amazon. This fight doesn't seem too bad because grass resists electric. Wrong. Luckily, Watson's Voltorb isn't too bad, and it goes for 2 rollouts before I get the KO with a Razor Leaf. Second is Magneton, who is a bit of a threat thanks to that Steel typing. Luckily, they miss a Supersonic as they go for a Leech Seed for passive recovery. I can't really do much, so I switch into Chuck on his debut battle, who gets paralyzed by a Thunder Wave. Magneton then connects with a Supersonic, but Chuck says screw that and gets a critical hit Bite. That is actually insane. On the next turn, Chuck takes a Sonic Boom, snaps out of confusion, and with Bite and Leech Seed, Magneton falls. This brings in Manectric, who is the real problem of the fight. Immediately, Manectric goes for a Quick Attack, which actually does a decent amount of damage as I stay fully paralyzed. After taking a Shockwave, Chuck goes for a Bite for pitiful damage, and then after taking a Quick Attack, a Bite brings Manectric down to his berry. Manectric then starts setting up Howls, and I can't really compensate because my bites aren't doing that much damage. I then decide to start switching to Razor Leaf, but that barely KOs Manectric, meaning Watson heals up on the next turn, and I get fully paralyzed. Manectric then sets up another Howl as I stay paralyzed once again. I can't stay in here, so I switch into Amazon on the Quick Attack. Amazon then gets paralyzed, but I connect with a Poison Powder against all odds. On the following turn, Manectric goes for another Howl as I go for a Leech Seed. And then Quick Attack on the following turn brings me down to just 3 HP because it got a critical hit. Luckily, I do connect with my Razor Leaf, and with Leech Seed I can finally take Manectric out, which just leaves Watson's last Pokemon, Discount Manectric. Since Amazon is low on HP, I switch into Syria as this thing goes for a Howl. Really? A +1 Electric isn't too bad, so I'm not that worried when he sets up another Howl because a Razor Leaf does massive damage. And then I have to tank a Shockwave, which is special by the way, and then I can get the KO with a Razor Leaf, winning me the battle and the 3rd gym badge. Seriously Watson, what the fuck? But hey, another badge means another encounter, and I find a Chespin. I don't think I've ever used a Chespin before, so that's pretty nice. You'll see how invaluable this thing is later down the line. Oh, hey look, Double Team. I'm sure that'll be useful later down the line as well. After watching Team Aqua and Team Magma argue about the fate of the world, I pick up the TM for Dig. Dig is very useful, and without it the run is going to be impossible, as you'll see soon. Something I learned while filming this challenge is that there's a 1 in 63 chance of seeing a hiker on the way to Mount Pyre. I didn't know this, and I bet you didn't know it either. This leads to the first Maxie fight of the playthrough, and normally I'd skip this, but he has a Camerupt and a Zubat for crying out loud. His lead Mightyena has Intimidate and then goes for Swagger to compensate, but luckily I break through and I go for a Needle Arm doing half. This turn I snap out of confusion and KO with another Needle Arm, which brings in Zubat. Luckily, I'm able to outspeed here and go for a Rock Tomb to get the clean one-shot. This leaves his most threatening Pokemon, Camerupt. I start out by going underground for a Dig as Camerupt whiffs a Lava Plume. On the following turn, I hit a Dig with just massive damage, but then Camerupt goes for a Flame Burst, which brings me down to just 4 HP. Luckily, it's not like that matters, and I outspeed and go for another Dig on the following turn, and Camerupt misses a Flame Burst, meaning I can finally pick up the KO, winning me one of the scariest fights of the playthrough. After this scary battle is the fight against Flannery and her fire types for the 4th gym badge. This fight would be impossible, but luckily Numel is a horrible Pokemon and I can exploit it with Overheat. I can set up a few double teams on the first turn with Sierra to avoid some overheats, but I do have to tank some. Luckily Overheat does lower special attack, meaning it does less damage each time it's used, and it only has 5 PP, so that's pretty good. I can also stay healthy with Synthesis until Numel is all out of Overheat PP. From there, I can switch into Bear to tank the takedown. I then switch into Amazon as Newell goes for a Magnitude. From here, I set up a Leech Seed for my plan. At this point, it's basically all over for Flannery. I can go ahead and set up 6 Bulk Ups with Bear and go for Dig to cleanly one-shot all of her Pokemon. This also includes the Bulky Turtle, and that was the reason why I needed 6 Bulk Ups. And that poses an interesting question. How is the Fire Gym easier than the Rock Gym? I guess we'll never know. Another badge means another encounter, and I pick up this awesome Trico here named Branch, and with some levels he quickly evolves into a Grovyle. This brings me to the fight with dear old dad, who's never in my life. Because of this, I gotta use the worst strategy in all of Pokemon, and one that's hated by Nuzlockers. It's called Double Team. Sierra is able to cleanly set up a +6 Double Team with not much issue. Look, I'm not proud of it either, but I really couldn't think of a strat. If it makes you feel any better, I reset this battle 8 times, and that doesn't include the other random wipes. The reason why I'm calling this attempt 1 is because I lost all that footage on my computer. The only real scary here is Lanoon, who goes for a belly drum to maximize attack, and my Razor Leaf barely picks up the KO. Luckily Lanoon misses a headbutt and I can go for a Razor Leaf to finally get the clean KO. Norman's last Pokemon is a Vigoroth, but this thing stands no chance, and a few turns later the 5th gym badge is mine. After this is some Team Evil stuff, and for some reason this Mightyena gave me so much trouble with a critical hit assurance on Amazon. I had no idea assurance could do that much damage, especially from a Mightyena of all things. That's not like that matters, because after this is my 3rd May battle. She leads off with Slugma and I with Shock. A bite does decent damage as I tank a Clear Smog. My 2nd bite barely leaves Slugma alive as Clear Smog brings me into the yellow. Thankfully this doesn't matter and a 3rd bite KOs. Second for May is her Lombre, who immediately goes for a fake out for a bit of chip damage. On the following turn Lombre goes for a Water Sport, which is literally nothing as I go for a Razor Leaf doing half. Lombre then goes for a Tri Attack, which does decent damage as I miss a Razor Leaf. This isn't good. I can then switch into Sire, who tanks the Tri Attack much better than Chuck did. Still, Lombre is able to outspeed and go for a final Tri Attack, which burns, before I'm able to go for a super effective Pluck, which kills a Mustache Man, at least for now. Last for May is her Grovyle, who hits a Pursuit and lives a Pluck in the yellow HP range. After taking a 2nd Pursuit leaving Syria deep in the red, a 2nd Pluck is enough to seal the deal, winning me the battle. I also caught a Grookey after this, but unfortunately I lost the footage, so yeah. After this battle, Chuck evolves into Torterra and gains more attack and bulk, meaning he's going to be great into Winona with the added stats and the Shell Armor ability. Winona leads with a Swablu and I get Amazon out there to go for a Leech Seed for passive recovery. Swablu tries going for a Mirror move, which, come on, this thing is useless. It's then off to Chuck to tank the Aerial Ace for minimal damage. I then proceed to set up 6 curses while also staying healthy with the Leech Seed. Because I'm at +6, I'm able to cleanly knock out all of Winona's Pokemon with a Rock Tomb apiece, winning me the 6th gym badge. Since the level cap has increased so much, I can evolve all my starters into their final forms, and let me tell you, it's much better than having to stare at their awkward teen faces all day. And then I can also watch Archie steal the red orb for the blue Pokemon, but screw that because I get the Magma emblem, and this makes so much more sense as opposed to the water hideout in Ruby. Although it is kinda random that Groudon's just in some random cave in the middle of nowhere Hoenn, but oh well, what can you do? I do have to fight Maxie here, and he does have a Crobat and a Camerupt, but luckily I have Chuck with Curse, so he's able to cleanly destroy Maxie's entire team with a Rock Tomb or an Earthquake. But while I was fighting Maxie, Archie was jacking a Submarine. Hopefully nothing bad happens to you, man. This brings me to the fight with Tate and Liza for badge number 7, and this badge can be a doozy. The duo lead off with a Claydol and Xatu, and I lead off with Sierra and Branch. Since this ROM hack features modern mechanics, Branch can turn into a Mega Sceptile and gain access to the Dragon type. Still, Branch is slower as Xatu sets up a Calm Mind, meaning that Sierra's Spirit Shackle barely leaves the bird alive. But have you ever noticed that Xatu's body kinda looks like a mini Sceptile? Me neither. Claydol then wastes a turn by going for an Earthquake, which is minimal damage. Unfortunately, Tate and Liza heal up Xatu with a Hyper Potion, but at the very least Branch can come in and KO the weird Claydol with a Leaf Blade. And hey, Sierra's actually able to cleanly one-shot Xatu with a Spirit Shackle. This brings in the twins' last Pokemon, Lunatone and Solrock. Solrock is the real threat here with Flamethrower, so I have Branch go for a Leaf Blade, which barely KOs, meaning they get off a Flamethrower into Sierra, which does massive damage. Luckily it doesn't get a critical hit, and a Spirit Shackle is enough for the KO. Unfortunately for us, Lunatone takes his time to set up a Calm Mind, which would be bad if not for the fact that Branch gets a critical hit Leaf Blade. That wins me the 7th gym badge, and I gotta say, that went surprisingly well. After this is a double battle with Tabitha and Maxie, but it's completely fine because Steven has his Steel types there. I honestly just focus on protecting my Grass types. In some random cave, I find Archie, and he's not looking too happy as he wants to fight me. Archie leads off with Mightyena, and I lead off with Bear. Mightyena goes for an Embargo as I go for a Leech Seed. Unfortunately, Mightyena then goes for a Taunt, meaning I can't use Bulk Up, but still a Seed Bomb does do decent damage. And luckily I do have my secret weapon, so I pivot into Chuck as Archie heals up. Mightyena then outspeeds and goes for an Embargo as I go ahead and set up a Curse. Mightyena then goes for a Taunt, which fails and falls to an Earthquake. Archie's second Pokemon is a Crobat, who hits a Leech Life, and I miss my Rock Tomb. Great. After taking a second Leech Life, a Rock Tomb brings the bat into the yellow HP range. This then prompts Archie to heal up and I get a high roll to take the bat out. Archie's last Pokemon is his Ace Sharpedo, so I switch into Bear to eat the Ice Fang. Sharpedo then proceeds to miss his Ice Fang as I go for a Seed Bomb to get the one-shot, winning me the battle. Archie then uses the red orb on the blue Pokemon, which causes Groudon and Kyogre to be pissed, and these idiots have no clue what to do. Luckily, Steven Stone comes in and tells us how to fix the problem, but then he just tells me to go to Pseutopolis in the storm by myself. They really trust 10-year-olds to do anything in this region. Steven Stone also forces me to explore the Cave of Origin by myself. Maybe this guy isn't as cool as I thought. Anyway, there's this guy in there named Wallace and asks me if I know where Rayquaza is. Why would you ask a random 10-year-old that? I guess we may never know. Luckily, I do find the Sky Snake and restore peace to the world. I'm not sure how Rayquaza calmed down Groudon and Kyogre, but he did, and we're moving on to the fight against Juan for the 8th and final gym badge. Juan uses water types, and you may think this fight is easy. Well, you're completely wrong. Juan leads off with the Love Disc, and I lead off with the Bear. The stupid heart goes for a Sweet Kiss, but Bear isn't having any of it and destroys Love with one Seed Bomb. Second for Juan is Celio, and I forgot to get the Brick Big TM, but it's okay. I have Seed Bomb, and it's more than enough to KO. This then causes Juan to send in his ace Kingdra, who is absolutely crazy. Kingdra starts out by setting up a double team as I hurt myself in confusion, which is fair considering what I did to my dad. On the next turn, the Seahorse sets up another double team, but luckily Bear breaks through and hits a Seed Bomb. It doesn't do too much damage, but it's good enough. Unfortunately, Kingdra then goes for a rest and wakes up with a Hell Chesto Berry, which is unfortunate, but at least I get off another Seed Bomb. And then Kingdra finally starts to attack and hits an Ice Beam, bringing me deep into the yellow, and it freezes. But I unthaw and miss a Seed Bomb. Sure. This means I have to switch into Amazon on an Ice Beam for massive damage. Luckily, I can then Mega Evolve, which gives Venusaur Thick Fat, meaning he takes neutral damage to Ice and Fire moves. But there is a catch, and we do need to dodge a critical hit Ice Beam, which we do, and then KO with a Petal Dance. This causes Juan to send in Wishcash, whose ground type isn't doing it any favors. Last from Juan is his Crawdon, and since I'm low and confused, it's off to branch on a Crabhammer. Unfortunately, I don't have another good Pokemon to swap into, so I do have to dodge a critical hit, which luckily does happen. But then my Leaf Blade barely misses out on the KO. This causes Juan to heal up, and a Leaf Blade brings the Crab back into the red. Since Branch would die to another Crabhammer, it's off to Chuck on another potion. Chuck then outspeeds and goes for a Razor Leaf, which barely KOs, and then he tanks a Water Pulse. Seriously, what the heck? Thankfully I can KO with a Razor Leaf on the following turn, winning me the 8th and final gym badge. With that, I'm ready to face the final 4 trainers, but not before fighting Wally. And let's be real, Wally is completely useless, so instead of narrating the fight, let me tell you why I haven't been able to upload. The truth is, I haven't had time and I'm still as busy as ever with personal stuff. That's honestly it. Sorry if you're expecting something else or something major. I am trying to get on a good upload schedule because it's one of my passions and I enjoy making videos. I do have some awesome challenges planned for the future, so stay tuned. But I'm not the focus of the video, otherwise it'd be a cringe YouTube apology video, so here's my final team. First up is Branch with a Sceptolite and Leaf Blade, so he's unstoppable. Second is Bear the Chespin, who's a great Pokemon, and now that he has Brick Break, he's also unstoppable. Third is Syria, who's a Ghost type and will be very useful down the line. Next is Chuck with Earthquake and Curse to set up and sweep teams. Following Chuck is Creek the Rillaboom, who hasn't been used yet but has grassy terrain and is a great support Pokemon. And lastly, Amazon, my starter. With utility moves and a Mega Stone, Venusaur is also unstoppable. The Elite Four in this game can be pretty challenging, but I think I have a play here. Let's do this. The first Elite Four member is Sydney, whose low levels always make him a pretty easy trainer to deal with. He leads off with Mightyena, and I get Bear out there. Unfortunately, Mightyena has Intimidate, so I decide to compensate by setting up a Bulk Up. Unfortunately, the stupid mutt has other plans and switches Bear with Chuck using a Roar. I go for an Earthquake, which barely leaves Mightyena alive, as Syria gets roared in. This is a horrible matchup, so it's off to Bear on the full restore. Thankfully, since I don't get intimidated, a Brick Break is enough for the clean KO. Second for Sydney is his Shiftry, who starts going for a double team, but Bear isn't having any of it and KOs with a Brick Break. Third from Sydney is Absol, who hits a hard Aerial Ace before being KO'd by a Brick Break. Fourth is Crawdon, but he's outgunned and killed by a Seed Bomb, which just leaves Cacturne. And for some reason, I switched into Syria on a Needle Arm. This is a horrible matchup, so I pivot into Branch on a Feint Attack. I then Mega Evolve, which is extremely overkill, and KO with Next Scissor, winning me the first battle of the Gauntlet. The second Elite Four member is Phoebe, who leads off with a Dusclops, and I with Chuck. A crunch does decent damage, but I get confused with a confuse ray. On the following turn, Dusclops goes for a protect, and luckily I don't hit myself. Thankfully on the next turn I outspeed and KO with a crunch. Second is Phoebe's second Dusclops, so it's off to Amazon on an Ice Beam. I then Mega Evolve Amazon, who goes for a Petal Dance, bringing down Dusclops to her Citrus Berry. She then tickles me with an Ice Beam on the following turn, and a Petal Dance is enough to KO Dusclops. Third is Banette, and a third Petal Dance gets the clean one-shot. Fourth is Sableye, so it's off to Chuck on a soft Nightshade. An Earthquake then does decent damage as Sableye sets up a double team. It's not like it matters, and an Earthquake makes the Cave Dweller history. This just leaves Phoebe's last Pokemon, Banette, who whiffs a Will-O-Wisp, and my crunch barely leaves it alive. Banette then connects with the second Will-O-Wisp, but it doesn't matter and the fight is over with a crunch. Third is Glacia and her Ice types. She leads off with Celio and I with Amazon. I Mega Evolve on turn number 1 and set up the Sun as the Steel hits minimal damage with an Ice Ball. A Solar Beam on the following turn is then enough for the KO, which sends in Glalie. A Solar Beam then brings Glalie into the yellow as he then sets up an annoying lead screen, but my Solar Beam on the following turn still KOs. Third is Celio, and I go for a Leech Seed, which was a mistake as I get attracted. Unfortunately, Amazon is in love with this Seal and allows her to set up the Hail, which is really bad. Luckily, he breaks through on the following turn and sets up the Sun, and the Steel misses a Blizzard. On the following turn, Amazon says bye to love, and he breaks out of the abusive relationship and kills with a Solar Beam. This leaves Glalie number 2, who goes for an Ice Beam as I go for a massive Solar Beam. Glacia for some reason doesn't heal up and hits an Ice Beam, bringing me into the yellow as another Solar Beam KOs, leaving just Walrein. Thankfully, Amazon outspeeds and gets a clean one-shot with Solar Beam, winning me the battle. If we didn't have Thick Fat, I don't see how we would have gotten past that fight. The last Elite Four member is Drake, and I had no clue what to do, so I said to hell with it and decided to use that double TM I had. Thankfully TMs don't break in this mod, so I can use them whenever. Anyway, Drake leads off with Shelgon, and I bring in Amazon. I set up a Leech Seed and get hit by a Rock Tomb. After taking a Double Edge, I then waste a turn and do nothing. From here, it's off to Sierra on a Dragon Claw. And then I switch into Creek for his debut battle to set up the grassy terrain as Shelgon goes for another Rock Tomb. After this, the stage has been set, so it's off to Chuck on a Rock Tomb, which lowers my speed. Then I set up a mix of double teams and curses. I understand evasion strats and sweeps are boring and I won't use them in future challenges, but I thought it'd be fun to use them here. They can be boring and take away from the fun, and I completely understand, but this is the last time I'm gonna do this, so enjoy Torterra destroying Drake. This is the moment we've all been waiting for. Wallace may be a water type user, but I can't help but sweat about his team. About half of it is pretty scary, and I'm not sure if I'm going to make this one, but who knows. Wallace leads off with Wailord, and I bring in my starter Amazon. I Mega Evolve, but Wailord dodges my Leech Seed and goes for a Blizzard, which luckily also misses. I then set the Sun back up and take a Blizzard, but I'm completely fine with Thick Fat. From here, a one-turn Solar Beam destroys a Fat Whale. Second is Tannerpool, who lives a Solar Beam and fires back with an Ice Beam, hitting me into the yellow. Thankfully, another Solar Beam takes him out, which brings in Wallace's ace, Milotic. Since I'm out of Solar Beam PP, I have to go for Petal Dance, but before I can do that, I have to tank an Ice Beam, leaving me with just 2 HP, and then my attack barely leaves the Sea Serpent alive, and it heals up with a Citrus Berry. I have no choice here but to watch my starter die right in front of me. RIP Amazon, you were the best boy ever. At the very least, I can get in Branch and KO with a Leaf Blade, leaving Wallace with half of his team. Fourth is Whiscash, but this is an easy KO and he falls to a Leaf Blade. Fifth is Gyarados, and this is Wallace's most threatening Pokemon. It immediately gets off an Intimidate to lower my attack. A Leaf Blade does okay damage, but Gyarados sets up a Dragon Dance and things are suddenly not looking good. Gyarados then sets up another Dragon Dance before a Leaf Blade brings him into the yellow. Thankfully, even at +2, Earthquake doesn't KO, and Leaf Blade brings the Serpent into the red. But then Branch is taken out by an Earthquake. RIP. At least Chuck can come for free, but Wallace uses a full restore, and this is really bad. I'm fully expecting to wipe here, but I do have Rock Tomb to lower speed. Gyarados then sets up another Dragon Dance to compensate for the Rock Tomb. A second Rock Tomb lowers Gyarados' speed stat and brings him into the red, and Gyarados goes for yet again another Dragon Dance. Unfortunately, Wallace heals up again. Even with the attack boosts, an Earthquake is not enough for the KO and actually does way less than I thought. This means another Rock Tomb brings this thing back into the yellow. From here, it's all over and Gyarados falls to a Rock Tomb. However, Wallace still has one more Pokemon left, Ludicolo. Chuck also levels up to level 57 and learns Leaf Storm, so that's cool. Unfortunately, Ludicolo gets off a massive Giga Drain and I miss my Leaf Storm, meaning it's all over for Chuck. It looks like Mustache Man has come back, and with a heavy heart I say goodbye to Chuck as he falls to a Giga Drain. At the very least, I can get in Syria, who does massive damage with the Brave Bird, which is just shy of the KO as Ludicolo sets up another double team. This means I miss my Brave Bird and watch this stupid thing set up another double team, but then I connect with my Brave Bird, winning me the battle and the run. This run was super fun, and not using Pokemon I've never used before was an awesome experience. When it came to the MVP, it was a tie between Chuck, Bear, and Amazon. Chuck was awesome with Shell Armor, so I didn't have to play around the critical hit. Bear helped with sweeps, and large parts of the game wouldn't have been possible without him, and Amazon was a starter with great utility moves. Ultimately, I think Chuck won for being successful throughout the entire playthrough, but you tell me in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, why not like and subscribe to the channel? It's free and it really helps me out. Also, you should follow me on Twitter to keep up with video updates. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.